So many of y'all saw my photos on Instagram and are asking me, Christine, Nassau Bahamas looks so dreamy. How should I plan my own trip there? And to be honest, after spending a month on the island, I made a lot of mistakes and I'm planning my return trip there. So in this video, I'm sharing with you things that you should not do when you're planning your trip and things to do instead coming up. And if you're new here, yo, I'm Christine Lozada with Where in the World is CL to make travel videos every week to help you get up, get out, and go travel. So if you like to travel, consider subscribing. Let's talk about the first thing not to do, which is don't think you're about to create an itinerary with a million different things to do. In my opinion, the thing that most people come to Nassau for is to spend time on the beach and in the water. In other words, the Bahamas are beautiful, and this is the place to lay out on the beach and go snorkeling or go scuba diving. So let's talk about that really quick. A few of the beaches I definitely recommend not to miss. One would be Love Beach. This is right next to the airport, which means as you're enjoying the sunshine, you've got the planes going right overhead, and that's a really cool experience. You can check that out in the other video I have linked in the description below. The other spot would be on Paradise Island. Whoa, the beaches on Paradise Island. Cabbage Beach, for example, so insanely gorgeous. Really, really beautiful there. And then the most popular beach, which is Cable Beach. That's where I spent the entire month. It's beautiful out there. And if you are expecting to spend time on the water, you should not come here during wet season. In other words, especially if you have a short vacation, you want to be here during dry season. So dry season are these months versus wet season. And I'll be totally honest, I was there in August 2022, which the most amount of likely hurricane activity is happening kind of around that time. And the first 2 weeks of my trip, I got some pretty crappy waves and the water was not that smooth at all. I went paddling with some very treacherous conditions, but this is the place to come during dry season and spend time on the beach, go snorkeling, go scuba diving. I love Stewart's Cove, a great one, especially if you love shark diving. Do all the water sports, stand up paddle, go kayaking, go parasailing, go jet skiing, and a lot of these things, I've added links in the description below, but a lot of times these guys are just set up along the beach and you can just drop in and tell them you wanna go out. And if you're thinking, yo, Christine, I'm not really a beach goer, what else is there to do? There are other things like cultural tours or run tours or food tours, and this is important, I ranked those by traveler rating for you. See that in the description below for you to find some other tours on the island. Given I was there for so long, I got the opportunity to spend time with the locals. And here's the biggest mistake I made. The number one thing that I plan on doing when I come back is jumping on a boat and going over to Rose Island. And if you're wondering what the heck is Rose Island, it's not that far from Nassau, and it's the experience where you go to the island where you can hang out with the swimming pigs, which is kind of a fun experience. And I made the mistake of saying no to my opportunity to go with the locals because on that day, I did this challenge where I walked around for 12 hours. You can see that in the description below if you're like wondering what the heck is that all about. But Rose Island, top of my list for when I go back to Nassau. And if you're wondering, well, Christine, what about like Airbnb or VRBO or rental houses? I've added a link to some of the top ones in the description below, but one of the things not to expect, don't expect getting around Nassau to be insanely easy. In other words, in my tips video, make sure you check that out in the description below, I talk about getting in and getting around the island. If you're staying at the resort, it's easy. You jump into a cab, they're all lined up, that's easy. There's no Uber on the island. So if you want a taxi and you're not getting into a taxi from a resort, it's not easy to flag one just walking around. I walked for 45 minutes one time, and actually I never ended up finding a taxi. I just walked directly to the destination, which when it's 90 degrees with 90% humidity, that is a hot walk, not the sexy kind either. Riding a bike, walking around, it's kind of treacherous. Some parts have good sidewalks. Most parts do not have great sidewalks. And driving, if you want to rent a car, I drove around for the month, you are driving on the left side People drive exactly how I would expect them to drive on the island, which is fast and furious and aggressively. And gas, I paid $6, and the second time I paid $6.30 per gallon. So that's not insanely inexpensive, but it's also kind of just, for me, it was kind of stressful driving around the island on the left side with tons of roundabouts. I mean, it's a vacation. You want to relax, right? So just know that that's what you're getting into if you choose to stay at a VRBO or an Airbnb, and getting around is not the easiest thing on this island versus other destinations. Ooh, I'm headed to Bonaire, which is one of the ABC islands, in a couple weeks, so make sure you stay tuned for those videos. Which, by the way, if you're getting some value out of this video, cheers that like button, consider subscribing. And I'm still planning my return trip, so add your tips in the comments below. We're all community and let's help each other out. Ooh, I just thought of something. Here's another way you can still enjoy the resorts without paying for them in full. In other words, if you're doing the VRBO Airbnb route, consider doing a day pass. You can do day passes to just about every single resort, and it's a really great way to be able to enjoy it without having to stay there. So that's something you can consider. Here's another tip around setting expectations on how much you're gonna spend on food and drinks. Don't expect this to be a cheap eats vacation. This is not your Southeast Asia trip. Food can be very expensive on this island, whether you're going to the grocery store, getting a random bag of groceries that doesn't even include alcohol in it for $160. I share that in my other tips video, or some of the places I ate around the island, full video on that as well in the description below. But things like lunch for one person, definitely over 50 bucks. Even just like coffee and pastries is around $15 per person. You can just expect to pay more on this island. If you're traveling like a lot of my friends are from New York City, San Francisco, the places I used to live at, then it's what you pay every day. But if you're coming from somewhere else, the sticker shock might be, well, exactly that, a little bit of sticker shock. Does it mean you can't find a cheap eat? Same thing as New York City. You can find that amazing dollar pizza. Eat the patties. The Bahamian patties on this island, they're so freaking delicious. I personally love the beef ones. I really love the beef patties from the Swiss pastry shop that's closer to Sandals Resort. Super tasty, but don't miss out on those. Also, don't expect to lose any weight. And while you're dining out and enjoying all of those restaurants, one thing not to expect as well is don't expect great customer service. It doesn't mean you won't find it, especially at the resorts. It's easier to find really great customer service. We love our bartender at Pizza Lab, but for the most part, Bahamian culture isn't one with amazing customer service. And so do expect to pay 15% gratuity and 10% VAT or 10% tax every single time. And do expect them to expect more tip on top of that, but don't expect the best customer service. That was just my experience. I'm gonna be totally honest, and this next one is one that's not easy for me to share, but I also know all my ladies out there are gonna ask me, Christine, I saw you traveling out there alone. Is it safe to travel solo to Nassau, Bahamas? And my answer is no, it's not. And this is just my experience. There are nine countries I've been to traveling alone, and for the most part, I freaking love it. I'm all about it, and I will still continue to do it. But in Nassau, Bahamas, my experience was the men being very aggressive. And you know, catcalling, that stuff, not a big deal. And if I were to repeat some of the things that I wrote down that they said to me, my channel will likely be banned. So I'm not gonna repeat those things. But it's one thing to be catcalled, not a big deal. You can just ignore that. But it's another thing when the culture is one where the personal space is not respected. And when people are right in my face and inside my personal space within inches, I ain't okay with that. And so I had that happen a lot. I also ran from somebody, actually caught that on video, link to that in the description below. Don't really want to promote that. Again, this is just my experience and this is just my advice, which is I would not advise solo female travelers. It's why I stopped walking around the island, I stopped using the bird scooters, and I just stuck with driving thereafter. It helped me to feel a little bit safer. And there were things like, oh man, I really wanted to catch the sunset at Jaws Beach. If you look at it on the map, it's on the side where you'll get the best sunset, but there were a lot of muggings there recently. And so there are parts of the island that are a little bit more remote, and a lot of the locals that I was hanging out with were saying, nah, like, do not go there alone as a woman, even at sunset. You know, I wouldn't stay there after the sunset. I would just capture the sunset and then go. But these were my experiences, and that's my advice. Which, if you're a woman who has traveled solo to Nassau and had a good experience, please add that in the comments below. It's important for other people to see your experiences and make the best decision for themselves. So on that difficult note, is it worth traveling to, and would I recommend it? Yeah, I would. I'm planning my return trip. Nassau is beautiful. It's a really awesome place, and I'm also planning on going to the Exumas, which every time I spent time with the locals or people who were born on the island, they're all like, Nassau, whatever, go to Exumas. So that's top of my list as well. And I know a lot of people who are asking me for these helpful travel tips don't really care about the tips, they just want the itinerary. So if you want to hear, I mean, again, it's in the works right now. I'll be looking for your comments below. And also your comments on other platforms where you're helping me to build my itinerary on Instagram, on TikTok, on Facebook, etc. But I'm gonna share right now what my literal itinerary looks like. So join me over in that video. And if you found some value here, choose that like button, and I'll see you in the next video. Ciao.